Hello, and this is week 3 of this introduction to mindfulness. And this week we're going to focus on mindfulness of thoughts. So we'll start with a 5-minute opening meditation. So you can just take your seat on a cushion or in a chair. Just be nice and upright, but not stiff or tense. Just kind of let your spine be straight, but your body around your spine just kind of melt and relax. You can close your eyes or gaze slightly ahead. And just anchor in your breath and notice where you feel this the most. Might be in your nose, or your throat, or in the rise and fall of your chest, or your belly. And just stay with this for a few moments. And then just notice the physical sensations of the breath. Notice how these sensations change as you inhale and then as you exhale. Now you can notice where there are other physical sensations that become obvious in your sense of awareness. Just letting any natural tension relax. Just paying attention to any sensation in your body that is foremost in your attention, that you're sensing in the most detail. And just being with this sensation and noticing how it changes as you breathe. If another sensation arises that draws your attention, you can shift your attention to this other physical sensation. Just being aware of these physical sensations as they draw into our awareness. If your mind drifts, just return to the breath. And then return to awareness of the sensations in your body. And we'll sit like this for a couple more minutes. Just returning to the senses in your body where you're feeling the breath strongest. On the inhale. On the exhale, just let your eyes open if they've been closed. Come back to the space around you. Stretch out a little bit if needed. So in this class, we're going to focus on mindfulness of thoughts, which will directly connect back on some of the first concepts and practices we talked about in the first week when it relates to mindfulness of breath. So let's start with just a couple of thought experiments. You can close your eyes for this first one if you want. I want you to start off by not thinking of a pink elephant. So just forget about this pink elephant. Just let it go from your mind. Just no thinking about the pink elephant. Just remember, no pink elephant. So you can open your eyes if they're closed. So through the power of suggestion, it's likely that you couldn't stop thinking about the pink elephant. Or maybe you could for at least a little bit, but then I'd bring it back up. So this is how our thoughts generally work, is the harder we try not to think of something that's been suggested, the more we tend to think about it, which is one of the many paradoxes we'll talk about today. And this is really the paradox of thinking. Just like we cannot tell our mind to stop thinking, we can't really get our pink elephant out of the mind, even if we try. But we can learn to accept that it's there, or our thoughts are there, and just let it be there. And then we can practice letting it go and returning to an anchor like the breath, or just allowing it to be there. And when we tend to allow our thoughts to be there, they tend to disappear and move on their own. So we'll do a second thought experiment. So when I tell you to go, we'll just take 1 minute, and I just want you to count as many distinct thoughts as you can that come to your mind in the course of that 1 minute. So when I say ready, go, just start counting. Okay. You can close your eyes if you wish and start counting. All right, you can stop and open your eyes. So I'd imagine if you're like most people, you probably had in the range of anywhere from 10 to 20, maybe more. It's not really the point of it. It's just kind of an exercise to show you how fast our minds do really move often, and how many thoughts we may have throughout a day. And we're going to talk with two main ways of working with thoughts. First is just noticing them and then letting them go over and over as needed. And then also working with them directly and making them part of our practice. So I just looked into some studies that tried to estimate the number of thoughts that we have in a day. And this ranges anywhere from 10,000 to 70,000, depending on the study you look at. So with that, you can do the math on how many thoughts we may have in a week, a month, a year, literally probably just millions of thoughts. Yet many of us still act surprised that we can't stop our thinking. But just like we talked about early on, just like the ears hear, the taste buds taste, we really just, our minds think, and we just shouldn't try to stop this. And not only have some of these studies shown the number of thoughts, or the estimated number of thoughts, they also show that the patterns in our mind and the thoughts we tend to have do tend to work in habitual loops and are often more negative with our negativity bias than positive. So this is also something else we can work with and practice. So I will do a talk on the mindfulness of thinking, and then we'll do a longer meditation specifically related to mindfulness of thinking. So in the talk, we'll talk about just some ideas around the content of your thoughts and different patterns. We'll talk about some practices for working with thoughts, and then just thinking about the bigger picture of how working with thoughts can impact our overall awareness and the world around us. So if you really stop to notice the content and become more aware of the landscape of your mind, as mystic and writer Carlos Castaneda said, you'll probably notice that we talk to ourselves too much. And if someone were to record the content of these thoughts, most of us would be deemed insane. But it's definitely important to realize the power of thoughts. So you put into perspective, thoughts are what led to beautiful creations like the Mona Lisa, but they also have led to things like nuclear weapons and other harmful aspects of our world. So Lao Tzu said, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character, it becomes your destiny. So as you can see, this chain starts with thoughts and leads all the way up to our overall existence and how we live our lives, which really does show you the power of our thinking. Unfortunately, the mind sometimes behaves like a spoiled child, often has no shame and does whatever it wants. For instance, without even knowing, we can be trying to meditate or have a quiet moment, and 10 minutes later, we'll realize we were planning our next vacation. So in the show Ted Lasso, the main character says, be a goldfish, when talking about forgetting our mistakes and grievances. But I think this can be rather dangerous if we apply this idea of a limited attention span to our thoughts. So the first week we talked about strategies like counting thoughts or saying in and out with your inhale and exhale. And then just working with thoughts and letting them go as they come up. Thinking about gently training the mind like a puppy. Just going through sit and stay over and over. So in this practice, we just let go and return to the breath or anchor whenever the mind drifts, no matter how many hundreds of thoughts we may have. So as we practice and get quieter, we can see how the mind does create our world and lead to our destiny. If you think about sitting in a movie and we go into it, our minds tend to suspend disbelief. If it's a good movie, at least, we tend to get wrapped up in the world and temporarily forget that what we are watching isn't really happening. And just like our thoughts, this seems totally real. The actors and actresses on the screen and the engaging plot. But then eventually the lights come on and the credits roll, and we remember that, oh, that was just a film and that it wasn't real. Well, our mind's constantly running film like this, and it can just tend to run in the background and control our lives if we don't spend some time becoming aware of these thoughts. Part of it is these tales and thoughts that are constantly spinning can seem quite compelling, but if written out in screenplays, I think they'd be rather humdrum dramas with a lot of repeating moments and disjointed plots. However, there's a way to start paying attention to this film and hopefully rewriting the script. So another paradox is that we use the mind to observe the mind and work with the mind. And as we start to work with thoughts, we tend to notice that they're pretty insubstantial. Like I said, they'll tend to come and go if we let them. And hopefully with practice, we also can stop automatically believing our thoughts, noticing that they are indeed real and they're there, but that doesn't always make them true. So if you think of a tree, for instance, just it helps to close your eyes and visualize a tree that you know. And just try to visualize it in as much detail as possible. Think of the leaves and the trunk and the bark and the limbs. And you can get a somewhat accurate representation of the tree, but it is not the tree. There's a lot of things that you're not seeing in this image in your mind that are a reality of the tree. Whether it's the roots underground or the pattern in the bark or the details on the leaves. In our mind, we're just seeing a very loose representation of the tree. So you can open your eyes if they were closed. So as we do become more aware of these stories, we tell ourselves, we notice they contain a lot of fake news, and that we often have loyalty to thoughts that are rather misguided. So a story by a meditation teacher named Ajahn Chah, told by Jack Kornfield, one of the people that runs my Mindfulness teacher program. So his teacher, Ajahn Chah, they were out walking one day, and the teacher points at a boulder and asks the students, "Is that boulder heavy?" And the students say, "Well, of course, it's a giant boulder. We probably couldn't pick it up." Ajahn Chah says, "It's only heavy if you pick it up." Which I think is definitely applicable to thoughts. They are only heavy if we choose to engage with them and believe them, even if they may not be totally true. I do think it's also important to be aware that thoughts are usually trying to keep us safe in some way or work in our best interests. They just tend to have a misguided way of doing so. So with mindfulness practice, we can start to see this insubstantial nature of thoughts and just start to let them come and go. And we can also start to cultivate an attitude towards these thoughts that is curious and doesn't take them so seriously. Another aspect that can happen is that we can get more space between stimulus and response. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. So we cultivate this space as we become aware of our thoughts and our breath. We're able to give ourselves more space that can lead to this deeper sense of freedom, which can also help us to start asking questions about thoughts, such as if they're useful and if they're helpful. And we can learn strategies for reframing and replacing unhealthy thoughts. For instance, whenever we notice something we can't have, or we desire something we know we can't have, we can work on shifting our practice to gratitude and becoming grateful for something we do have. So in thinking about these practices and working with them, we can, as I said, maybe start to notice a deeper sense of freedom from these thoughts, like they're not so much in control, which can also lead us to a deeper sense of connecting to the world around us. And just a deeper sense of being human, like we have also talked about. Because we really don't practice meditation to become better at meditation, but rather just to find this deeper sense of freedom and connect to the world around us. I think my favorite metaphor is the muddy pond. If you just think about water in a pond that's been stirred up and is all brown, and if you think about that, just watching it over time, eventually the water will settle if it's not stirred up again, and eventually become much more clear to where you can see with clarity the bottom of the pond. So if you think about this related to the mind and just letting it settle and be able to see what's going on with more clarity. Which then can help us learn to open up to a deeper sense of the mystery around us and this vast universe that's both inside of us and outside of us. So if you just think about doing this one step at a time, and back to the idea by Jon Kabat-Zinn that we can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf. So just a few thoughts as we transition to meditation. So as we've talked about, as we work with this, we will often find ourselves lost in thought. And that's not a negative thing, that's just the practice. And when we find ourselves, it's that moment awareness of bringing us back that is the practice. Another common response to realizing you've been thinking is just getting hooked by it. And then you can be lost for longer periods of time. It really doesn't matter if it's been 5 seconds or 5 minutes. We just let go and come back to the breath, or let it be there and come back to the breath. Doing this with patience and kindness and the intention just to shift our focus. Just like with any other practice, you're in the process of training your mind. If you think of it again like the puppy, just the patient repetition works better than punishing yourself. Rather than feeling frustrated that you've once again become lost or drifted from your thoughts, you can just give yourself an appreciation that you've realized this, and just with a friendly tone, return to your anchor. So we'll do about a 10-minute meditation. So you could go back to taking a posture that allows you to feel comfortable and relatively still. And you can let your eyes close or your gaze drop ahead gently in front of you. Just finding that posture that's a good balance between being alert but also relaxed. Just feeling any tension in your body start to relax and melt around your spine. Just taking a couple breaths to deepen and settle into your body and your breath. Maybe taking some deeper breaths. Just breathing in a calming energy as you inhale. And just letting go and releasing with each exhale. And just returning to letting your breath breathe itself. Again, noticing where you have the deepest sense of your breath. Knowing that you can choose another anchor, such as sound or a body sensation, if the breath isn't working for you. There's some sounds to notice. So each time your mind wanders, you can gently return to the breath or whatever anchor you're focusing on. Just doing this with patience and kindness each time. Just knowing this is part of strengthening your relationship and developing a wise relationship to the mind. And as you notice thoughts and want to work with these thoughts, you can just name them thinking, with a gentle, friendly, and non-judgmental tone. And then just return to your anchor. Another way you can work with thoughts is to notice the specific content of your thought and just name that. Maybe it's planning or worrying, remembering, hoping, wanting. Don't struggle to find the right word if it doesn't come immediately. Just go back to thinking. And whatever you name it, then just return to the breath. So we'll just sit and practice with this for another 5 minutes or so. You can also note other things that you may experience, like hearing or body sensations. Also, noting any related thoughts like pain, tingling, and then just return to the breath or your anchor. So, as we move to the end of the session, we can also think about how to reframe thoughts and work with thoughts in that way. So, we're just going to practice with this with a perspective of gratitude. And just as a thought arises, think about how you can shift that to gratitude, or just think of things you are grateful for. So I could, maybe a thought of the barking dogs right at the start of the meditation. I can be frustrated. Or I can just shift that to gratitude about having these cool dogs in my life and just how much enjoyment they bring us every day. So we'll close with a couple minutes of this practice and just noticing thoughts, and then instead of returning to the anchor, just think about how you can shift those thoughts to gratitude. As we move towards closing this session, you can also just bring gratitude to your thoughts that they're ultimately trying to help us in some way, even though it feels like they sometimes drive us crazy. And you can just open your eyes slowly if they've been closed and just stretch out and come back to this moment and just look around you a little bit, carrying through that sense of gratitude to the world around you. And I like how this poem by Kaveri Patel conveys this idea of befriending our thoughts. It's called Thanking a Monkey. It says, "There's a monkey in my mind swinging on a trapeze, reaching back to the past or leaning into the future, never standing still. Sometimes I want to kill that monkey, shoot it square between the eyes so I won't have to think about it anymore or feel the pain of worry. But today I thanked her, and she jumped down straight into my lap, trapeze still swinging, and we sat still." So we can, like I said, work with thoughts in two ways. Just notice them and continue to return to our anchor, which is really what I would say is the core practice of mindfulness. But we can also notice and then just let them be there and let them be part of our experience, good or bad. Or we can reframe them, like that last practice we worked with. So whether you see them as a monkey or a pink elephant or something else, we can learn to work with them and just continue to develop a deeper sense of stillness and openness. So as we come to a close, I would just like to thank you for your practice and for taking this time with me and for yourself.